Remember him? Here's the real reason Joe Pesci quit acting. Joe Pesci is a unique character. Not in a bizarre way, but he sure doesn't fit the mold of your typical Hollywood star. One day, he's a guitarist dreaming of becoming a lounge singer. Fast forward a few years and he's starring alongside Robert De Niro, winning over Scorsese fans with his 5'3" frame packed with dynamism. Then, just as suddenly as he appeared, he vanished from the acting scene. Why did he leave his booming career behind? Today, we delve into the fascinating reasons behind Joe Pesci's decision to step away from the spotlight at the peak of his fame. Humble beginning. Joe Pesci, the actor known for his fiery temper and tough guy roles, came from humble beginnings. He was born in Newark, New Jersey, in 1943. His mom, Maria, worked as a barber, and his dad, Angelo, drove a forklift and worked as a bartender. Joe's family was from Italy, and their roots could be traced back to both Turin and a small town called Aquilonia. Joe grew up in Belleville, New Jersey, and went to Belleville High School. But even as a little kid, he was already showing signs of his acting talent. By the time he was 5 years old, he was performing in plays in New York City. It's like he was born to be on stage. At just 10 years old, he was a regular on a TV show called Startime Kids, where he showcased his singing and dancing skills alongside other talented youngsters, like Connie Francis. It was a fun and exciting experience for young Joe, and it gave him a taste of what it was like to be in the spotlight. But Joe's connection to the music world went even deeper. He was friends with guitarist Tommy DeVito, who was part of a band called The Four Lovers. This band included another talented singer named Frankie Valli. Joe also knew Bob Gaudio, who played keyboards for the Royal Teens. In 1958, Joe introduced Bob to Tommy and Frankie, and this led to the formation of the famous band The Four Seasons. Talk about being in the right place at the right time. Joe and Tommy remained good friends for the rest of Tommy's life. When Tommy hit a rough patch in the 1970s after leaving the Four Seasons, Joe even paid him a salary to help him out. He also gave Tommy small parts in some of his movies in the 1990s. It's a sweet story that shows how Joe was always there for his friends, even when they were going through tough times. But Joe's life wasn't all about music and acting. He also had a childhood friend named Robert De Niro, who would later become a part of the American Mafia. It's a reminder that Joe grew up in a tough environment, surrounded by people from all walks of life. Early career. In the 1960s, Joe Pesci's life took a few different turns. He followed in his mom's footsteps and became a barber, giving haircuts to people in his neighborhood. But he also had a passion for music, and he started playing guitar with several bands. One of those bands was Joey D and the Starlighters, who were famous for a song and dance called The Peppermint Twist. It was a catchy tune that got everyone moving, and Joe was right there, strumming his guitar and adding to the excitement. But Joe didn't just want to play other people's music. He had a voice of his own, and he wanted to share it with the world. In 1968, he released an album under the name Joe Ritchie called Little Joe Sure Can Sing. It was filled with covers of popular songs from that time, and it showed off Joe's singing talent. Later on, Joe teamed up with his friend Frank Vincent, another actor you might recognize from movies like Goodfellas and Casino. They formed a comedy duo called Vincent and Pesci, and performed in clubs and theaters from 1970 to 1976. Their act was a mix of silly jokes like the ones Abbott and Costello used to do, and insults, just like the famous comedian Don Rickles. People loved their shows, and they became close friends both on and off stage. In 1975, Joe and Frank even took their act to Broadway, the famous theater district in New York City. They performed in a show called The New Vaudevillians, but sadly, it only lasted for 1 week. But Joe's dream of making it big didn't end there. In 1976, he starred in a low-budget crime movie called The Death Collector, where he played a tough-talking debt collector. His friend Frank Vincent was also in the movie. After filming wrapped up, Joe moved back to the Bronx and worked at a restaurant called Amici's. It was a humble job, but it allowed him to stay close to his roots and his passion for performing. Little did Joe know that this small role in The Death Collector would catch the attention of a big-time actor named Robert De Niro. Rise to stardom. In 1979, while working at the restaurant in the Bronx, Joe got a phone call that would change his life. It was Martin Scorsese, a famous director, and Robert De Niro, a big-time actor. They had seen Joe's performance in The Death Collector and wanted him to be in their new movie, Raging Bull. Joe was thrilled. This was his chance to work with two of the biggest names in Hollywood. He played Joey LaMotta, the brother of the main character, Jake LaMotta, a famous boxer. Joe put his heart and soul into the role, even breaking a rib during filming, but it was all worth it because his performance was amazing. He won a BAFTA award, which is like a British Oscar, for being a great new actor, and he even got nominated for an Academy Award. After Raging Bull, Joe's career took off. He was in a bunch of smaller movies, but then he got another big break in 1984 when he was cast in Once Upon a Time in America, with Robert De Niro again. This was a long and complicated movie about gangsters in New York City, and Joe's performance was unforgettable. He even tried his hand at TV, starring as a detective in a comedy show called Half Nelson. But the show didn't last very long, and Joe went back to focusing on movies. In 1988, Joe appeared in a very different kind of movie, Michael Jackson's musical film, Moonwalker. He played the bad guy, a crime boss named Frankie Mr. Big Ladeo. It was a fun and over-the-top role that showed off Joe's range as an actor. By this point, Joe Pesci was a well-known name in Hollywood. He had proven himself to be a talented and versatile actor, and he was ready for even bigger and better things. Little did he know that his next role would be in one of the most iconic gangster movies of all time, Goodfellas. In 1989, Joe Pesci's career took a hilarious turn when he joined the Lethal Weapon movies as Leo Getz, the fast-talking, wisecracking sidekick to Mel Gibson and Danny Glover's detective duo. Leo was a total scene stealer, with his over-the-top personality and endless stream of jokes. He quickly became a fan favorite, appearing in 3 of the 4 Lethal Weapon films. But Joe's most iconic role came in 1990, when he reunited with director Martin Scorsese and actor Robert De Niro for the gangster masterpiece Goodfellas. He played Tommy DeVito, a hot-headed mobster with a short fuse. It was a role that would forever cement Joe Pesci's place in Hollywood history. Interestingly, Tommy DeVito was also the name of one of Joe's childhood friends and a member of the band The Four Seasons. But this was just a coincidence, not a tribute to his old pal. Another familiar face in Goodfellas was Frank Vincent, Joe's old comedy partner. In a memorable scene, Joe's character Tommy even kills Frank's character in a fit of rage, after being told to go home and get your shine box. Talk about a tense moment. The magic behind Joe's performance in Goodfellas came from a unique filmmaking process. During rehearsals, Scorsese let the actors improvise and say whatever they wanted. He recorded these sessions, picked out the best lines, and added them to the script. Remember that scene where Tommy tells a story and Henry Hill, played by Ray Liotta, laughs? Tommy gets all serious and asks, "Funny how? Do I amuse you?" That scene was actually based on something that happened to Joe in real life. He was working as a waiter and accidentally called a mobster funny, which didn't go over well. Joe and Ray Liotta practiced that scene over and over again, trying out different things and making it up as they went along. The director, Martin Scorsese, recorded them and used their best lines in the final script. Even the dinner scene with Tommy's mom was mostly made up on the spot. Joe's performance in Goodfellas was so amazing that he won an Oscar for Best Supporting Actor. But when he went up on stage to accept the award, he didn't give a long speech. He just said, "It's my privilege, thank you," and walked off. It was one of the shortest acceptance speeches in Oscar history. But Joe wasn't just about tough guy roles. He also starred in the super popular Home Alone movies, where he played one of the bumbling burglars trying to outsmart a clever kid. Joe's character, Harry, yelled a lot and used funny, made-up curse words that reminded people of Yosemite Sam, the grumpy cartoon character from Looney Tunes. In 1991, Joe played a different kind of character in the movie JFK. He played David Ferry, a real-life person who was suspected of being involved in the assassination of President Kennedy. It was a serious role, but Joe showed that he could handle drama just as well as comedy. Then, in 1992, he starred in the hilarious comedy My Cousin Vinny, playing a lawyer who goes to Alabama to help his cousin, played by Ralph Macchio, who was falsely accused of a crime. It was a different kind of role for Joe, but he was so funny and charming that the movie became a huge hit. That same year, Joe played another different kind of character in The Public Eye. He played a photographer who gets caught up in a mystery. This movie wasn't as well known as some of his others, but critics really liked Joe's performance, saying it was one of his best. In 1992, Joe Pesci got to host the famous comedy show Saturday Night Live. It was a big deal for him, and he used his opening monologue to talk about something that happened on the show the week before. A singer named Sinead O'Connor had torn up a picture of the Pope, and Joe joked that he wanted to give her such a smack. It was a controversial joke, but it showed that Joe wasn't afraid to speak his mind, even if it meant getting a few laughs along the way. Later that year, Joe joined Robert De Niro and Chaz Palminteri in a movie called A Bronx Tale. The film was directed by De Niro and was based on a play written by Palminteri. They both personally asked Joe to be in the movie, which was a big honor. Joe played Carmine, a small but important role in the story. In 1995, Joe teamed up with Scorsese and De Niro again for the movie Casino. He played Nicky Santoro, a tough mob enforcer based on a real-life gangster. During filming, Joe even broke the same rib he had broken 15 years earlier while making Raging Bull. Ouch! Joe was also considered for a role in the Christmas comedy Jingle All the Way, but the part went to Sinbad instead. It's interesting to think about how different the movie might have been with Joe's fiery energy, instead of Sinbad's more laid-back style. Throughout his career, Joe Pesci played all sorts of characters. He was in action movies like Man on Fire, comedies like The Super, and even dramas like With Honors, where he played a homeless man. He wasn't afraid to try new things and show off his versatility as an actor. Sudden retirement. In 1999, Joe Pesci surprised everyone by announcing that he was mostly retiring from acting to follow his true passion, music. You might be thinking, wait, Joe Pesci sings? But it turns out he's not just a talented actor, he's also a pretty good musician. When Joe decided to retire from acting, he released a new album called Vincent LaGuardia Gambini Sings Just For You. It was a fun project, named after his funny lawyer character from the movie My Cousin Vinny. The album even had a rap song on it. Who knew Joe Pesci had those kind of moves? It's pretty cool that Joe was able to pursue his love of music after spending so many years in front of the camera. It shows that it's never too late to follow your dreams and try new things. By the late 90s, Joe Pesci's passion for acting had started to fade. He wasn't feeling the same excitement he used to have for the roles he was being offered. After starring in Casino, a classic gangster movie, most of the scripts he received just didn't compare to the amazing films he had done in the past. Remember those movies like Eight Heads in a Duffel Bag or Gone Fishin'? They weren't exactly his proudest moments. This feeling of dissatisfaction probably led to his decision to step back from acting. He once said that he loved being in movies, but only if they were good movies with good roles. He didn't want to be in just any movie, because he knew that could hurt his reputation and his love for acting. Later career, Joe Pesci might not be acting as much as he used to, but he hasn't completely disappeared from the silver screen. He's still willing to take on a role every now and then, especially if it's for a good friend. His closest pal in Hollywood is Robert De Niro, and they've starred in some amazing movies together over the years, like Once Upon a Time in America, Raging Bull, Casino, and the unforgettable Goodfellas. These movies are some of the best in both of their careers. In fact, it was his friendship with De Niro that brought Joe out of retirement for a small but important role in The Good Shepherd, a movie De Niro directed in 2006. That's the only big movie Joe's been in since the year 2000. Aside from that, he's mostly stuck to smaller projects like the 2010 drama Love Ranch and a funny Snickers commercial. But even though Joe's not as active in Hollywood as he used to be, he's still willing to put in the work for a good role. Around 2011, he was supposed to be in a movie about the Gambino crime family, starring as John Gotti's friend and enforcer. To get ready for the part, Joe even gained 30 pounds. But then something went wrong, and they wanted him to play a smaller role for less money. Joe wasn't happy about this, so he sued the movie's producers for a whopping $3 million. They eventually settled the lawsuit, but the movie still hasn't been made. In 2016, Joe Pesci made a surprise appearance at the Guys' Choice Awards with his old pal, Robert De Niro. It was a special moment for fans, as they hadn't seen Joe in the spotlight for a while. De Niro used the opportunity to talk about a new movie he was working on with Martin Scorsese called The Irishman. He said they really wanted Joe to be in it, but Joe wasn't too keen on the idea. In fact, he had already turned down the role over 40 times. But Martin Scorsese is a persuasive guy, and he eventually convinced Joe to join the cast of The Irishman. The movie was a big deal, with Netflix paying a whopping $175 million to make it. With stars like Robert De Niro, Al Pacino, and Joe Pesci, it's easy to see why they were willing to invest so much money. Joe's role in The Irishman was different from his usual tough guy characters. He played Russell Bufalino, a real-life mob boss who was more of a quiet and calculating figure. It was a challenge for Joe, but he pulled it off with his usual brilliance. The movie was a huge success, earning critical acclaim and numerous awards. Joe's performance was praised for its subtlety and depth, proving that he was more than just a hot-headed gangster. Murder accusation. Joe Pesci's love life wasn't always smooth sailing. He was married to a model actress named Claudia Harrow from 1988 to 1992, and they had a daughter together. After their divorce, they seemed to stay on good terms, as Claudia even appeared in 4 of Joe's movies. But things took a dark turn when Claudia's life became entangled in a bizarre and shocking legal case. After splitting from Joe, Claudia married a Hollywood stuntman named Garrett Warren. However, their relationship quickly soured, and in 1999, just a year before a terrifying incident, they separated. A stranger shot Garrett Warren multiple times at his home in California, leaving him severely injured. It took years for the police to solve the case, but eventually they found some clues linking Claudia to the crime. It turned out that Claudia had hired a hitman to kill her ex-husband. She even tried to hire another hitman to finish the job after the first one failed. It was a shocking revelation that painted Claudia in a very different light. During Claudia's trial in 2012, she showed up to court each day with a large group of people, including a nun dressed in white and Joe Pesci dressed in black. It was a bizarre sight, and it made the trial even more sensational. Despite the evidence against her, Claudia pleaded no contest, meaning she didn't admit guilt but accepted the punishment. She was sentenced to over 12 years in prison for her role in the attempted murder. While there were whispers that Joe Pesci might have been involved in the plot, the police investigated and cleared him of any wrongdoing. It seems like he was simply supporting his ex-wife during a difficult time, even though her actions were shocking and disturbing. Hobbies. Despite taking precautions, actors can still get hurt while filming, and Joe Pesci learned this the hard way. Not once, but twice he broke the same rib during intense fight scenes. The first time was while filming Raging Bull with Robert De Niro, and the second time was on the set of Casino, another Martin Scorsese film. Both movies were critically acclaimed, and Raging Bull even earned Joe an Oscar nomination. But all that pain made him joke that maybe making bad movies wasn't so bad after all, since he wouldn't get hurt as much. Speaking of getting hurt, Joe's love for golf is no secret. He's a huge fan of the game, and he used to hit the links whenever he could, even when he was busy making movies. But now that he's mostly retired from acting, he has even more time to spend on the golf course. It's like a dream come true for him. Back in the day, after the success of Raging Bull, Joe started getting offered a lot of roles as tough Italian guys from New York. He got tired of playing the same type of character, so he turned down many movies and started playing golf instead. He said it helped him stay sane and keep his mind off the frustrating parts of Hollywood. He even played with other famous actors like Jack Nicholson and Dennis Hopper, as well as with pro golfer John Daly. According to Golf Digest, Joe's golf handicap is a pretty impressive 15.9, which means he's quite a good player.